Conversation with Tim Otitoju. Let's talk about business and lifestyle.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Tim. It is a great day today. There's inauguration going on in America. There's a lot of things going on in the world. I'm excited to have Luc Mullinder with me. He's an ex-professional football player in the CFL, and now he's an executive. So I just want to talk to him a little bit about the sports world and how you go from the sports world to the working world. I guess it's work, but it's a different style of work. Hi, Luke.
Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited about the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you for joining me. We've known each other a long time, but I don't, so many things we're going to talk about here. I don't know if we've actually ever really talked about it when we were having beers or playing poker. So
Yeah.
I guess, have you always known that you wanted to be a professional athlete? Like, at what point in your life did you say to yourself, I think I could be a football player. I could be a professional football player.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, man. I think that it sort of happened out of necessity for me because I knew I wanted to go to college, but I also knew, and my dad had told me very early on that, hey, if you want to go to college, you got to figure out a way to get there. We're not going to have the money to pay for everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I always knew that I had to find a means to get to college, and I was good at sports. To be honest with you, man, I always my favorite sport's basketball,
Okay.
and I always wanted to. I wanted to be in the NBA a lot more than I wanted to play professional football. So, it just had a funny organic way of working out, man. We were playing one of our district championships, our city championships, my senior year of high school, and my dad always came to my games. But it was funny because this particular time, for some reason, when we were warming up, my dad was like sitting in the crowd. He never does that. He usually sits as far away from everybody as possible, and he was talking to my coach. And I knew it was a funny conversation, right? So, anyways, we played the game. We ended up losing the game. I was all bummed out, and on the way home, he's like, hey, so, had a talk with your coach today. And I was like, yeah, I saw that, man. What were you guys talking about? He's like, well, we were just sort of sitting there chatting about your future. And I'm like, oh, my future, huh? That you were discussing my future?
Without you.
But yeah, but what he said, he's like, no, not in that regard. Cause I had scholarship offers for football and basketball. But my dad had said, your coach really thinks that, hey, you'd be good in both sports if you took an athletic scholarship for either basketball or football. He goes, but he really thinks that you might be able to make some money if you took your football scholarship and turned it into and really focused on it. So that's sort of where it went, man. And then it just so happens that I was drafted in the CFL after college at Michigan State. I'm a Spartan.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. And the rest is history, man. So it happened out of necessity. That's what I always say.
That's amazing. I've never played sports at a college level or professional level, but I've always envied the guys that played at a college level. So what was that experience like?
I always tell people when they ask me, hey, what was it like playing Division I football? And I say, well, imagine your best case scenario, and then I say it's that times 3. Right? Like it was everything that I thought it was going to be, man. I probably was a little bit immature to handle it. I didn't have my mind right the first couple of years when I went down there. I just wanted to party and do all the things a college kid was supposed to do outside of sport. That was my focus. But it was everything. The first time I ran out in Spartan Stadium in front of the 90,000 cheering fans, the first winter conditioning workout, right? Like I learned everything that I do now, and some of the discipline and the work ethic that I have now in my professional life. I got it very early on there at Michigan State. I always remember walking into the weight room, and right above the weight room door entrance was a sign that said "Tough love exists here." And I needed it. I needed it as a young man. I needed it as somebody who needed to find his way in society. And I think that I got a lot of my foundation, that I sit on now from Michigan State and from the lessons that I taught being a member of the football team there.
That's amazing. Being being that we live in Regina, hockey is the big thing in Regina, right? And there's so
Yeah.
many kids that want to make it in the big leagues and make it into the big show. So for those kids, what type of advice would you give to them? Because you talked about work ethics and things like that, and
Yeah.
other things to it.
Yeah. There's a couple things I'd say to the kids. I say that, the first thing I'd say is that you can't always be the biggest. You can't always be the fastest, and you're not always going to be the best. But what you can be is the most competitive, period. You can be the most competitive person that they've ever seen. And I think that that's what I'd lead out with. And then to follow up on that, I would say, and this is something I learned later on in my football career too, is that if you want to master an ability in your sport, make it dependability. Be a guy that is coachable, right? Be a guy that can take what his coach is saying to him and apply it, whether it's hockey, basketball, football. Those are the guys that get the farthest. Because again, whether it's Michigan State or whether it's the professional locker rooms that I was blessed to be a part of, I've seen some of the greatest athletes I've ever seen never hit the field. They never made an impact in their sport. And it was because they didn't want to be dependable. They didn't want to learn a playbook. They didn't want to take the coaching. They wanted to do things their way. And in some respect, that's a good thing. But at the same time, you've got to master being dependable if you want to grow in your sport, because it's only your talent is going to take you so far, and your competitive nature is going to take you so far. But it's the little intangible things and those characteristics that you can add that nobody else wants to really add, right? Being coachable, listening, right? We had a football saying in our football locker room, right? It's be where your feet are, or, alignment, assignment, execution. Know where you're supposed to be, know what you're supposed to do, and make the play when you're in position to make the play. So be dependable. So those are the two pieces of advice I'd give.
Alignment, assignment, execution.
That's the football thing, yeah. So the two things most of all is you can always be the most competitive person in the locker room, and again, if you want to master an ability, make it dependability. Be a coachable athlete, and that'll take you farther than anything.
That's amazing. So I guess when you first got that call that you were drafted into the CFL, how did that feel? Which team was it? Was it Montreal or Saskatchewan?
Oh, it was Saskatchewan. Yeah, it's really funny, actually. It's a funny story. I was actually in study hall at Michigan State. I was doing an essay, final paper. And this was the days of, we had cell phones, but they weren't as advanced as they were now, right? They weren't smartphones.
Yeah.
So I was, doing but every now and then I would refresh the CFL draft board that I had going on a different computer. But anyways, I didn't see my name called, and then I eventually got lost in the things that I was doing in school. And the agent that I had at the time, he called me when I got drafted, and he goes, "Hey man, congratulations, you were selected today. You're the 32nd overall pick. That's fantastic, man. I'm so happy for you." And it's funny because I remember saying, "Okay, yeah, cool, man. So where did I get picked?" And as soon as I said that, he's like, "Yeah, the team really thinks that you're going to be a great fit there. They want somebody who's going to add some athleticism up front." And I said, "Well, okay, cool, man, but where did I get picked?" And then he was like, "And, they have a fantastic general manager that, and I'm like, "Terrence," this is his name, Terrence. I said, "Stop. Where did I get picked?" And the reason I was asking him, because when I hired him, the one thing I told him, the one thing I wanted to do was not be drafted in Saskatchewan, because I didn't want to deal with the cold. And so when I stopped him, I said, "Stop. Where did I get picked?" He goes, "Oh, Saskatchewan." But man, I'm telling you right now, you're going to love it. So it was, but you know what? It was one of the proudest moments, man. And right now I sit in Saskatchewan, and I've made a home here. I've met guys like you. I've come close to your family. It's a blessing, man. I look back, I wouldn't have done anything different. And I really feel like in Saskatchewan, I grew a little bit more. I got outside the arrogance of being raised on the East Coast. I really feel like I got the final makings of being a man in this province. So I'm really proud of it.
That's awesome. Like in Saskatchewan, we bleed green, right? Like we are huge Rough Rider fans here. And I guess there's Rough Rider fans across the country, but in Saskatchewan, especially when you step into that stadium, it's probably nothing like the 90,000 people in Michigan, but our 30,000, 40,000 people, they really make people feel at home. So,
Yeah,
and it's great watching you play.
yeah, it's just as loud, man. That's what I always say. It may only be 30,000, but it's just as loud. I mean, I've played in front of, Ohio State, Michigan. Those are all crowds of over 100,000 people, right? Some of the loudest stadiums.
Yeah.
One of the loudest stadiums in the Big Ten is Iowa, and that only seats 60,000, right? So, again, the fan base here is amazing, but the opportunities that arose from football are something that have been very important to me. It's one of the reasons I'm still here, right? Aside from my family.
That's awesome. Yeah, I often see people after their professional football life struggle to get into their careers afterwards.
Yeah.
And I know that you've been very successful in your career as an executive. So what made you different? What are some of the things that you did differently to prepare yourself for life after football?
Well, I think the most important thing to say to your listeners right now is that I didn't do anything different. I struggled. I really did. The first couple of years, man, I struggled to find my way, and one of the reasons I struggled was because I had never thought about it. But from when I was a young kid growing up in Mississauga and Toronto, I had done sports, right? Like it's what I did. All the sacrifices I made, the parties I missed out on, the sort of the athletic discipline that I had to have, they all got poured into sports, to football, to basketball, and I think I took for granted the fact that I was a professional athlete, right? Like it's amazing to think that you're 1% of the population that wants to be a professional athlete. Literally, like 1% of us make it to that level. And I just figured it'd be a smooth transition, and it wasn't. Right, like, and the reason why it wasn't a smooth transition for me is because I couldn't find anything that I was passionate about. I just wanted to make sure, for instance, when I got out of football, that the paychecks that I get, they matched the ones that I was getting from football, because that's what I knew. For a while there, it was a struggle, and it was because I just wasn't passionate about anything I was doing. I loved football, but I didn't know how much I missed it. Right? Like, you don't necessarily identify with the fact that you're struggling with, oh, it's because you're not passionate about it. You just think that, you can, you can persevere because that's what you do, right? You're mentally tough, and you're going to go through some tough times. But I had to find something that I was passionate about to do, and I'm very fortunate that my wife supported me through everything. I think that she helped me find those passions and the things that I was actually wanting to do off the field. Because Tim, I had never thought about it. Like from 15 to 32 or however old I was when I retired, I was just about sports, and it was really tough. But I'm glad I did, because when you get into something that you like to do after, the lessons that you learn from professional sports and from sports in general, those are timeless lessons that you can apply and you can be really successful in. It's just a matter of finding something that you're passionate about. And I was very fortunate that I was always passionate about helping people.
Yeah.
I had grown to, really have a soft spot for the people of Saskatchewan. And I felt like, I was so blessed in my career. I played 9 years. I won a Grey Cup in 2007. It was time to give back to the province, right? And so now, sitting at the Canadian Red Cross as the vice president here in Saskatchewan, it's an opportunity to continually give back and to continually help others help people, because we take great pride in our volunteer corps that actively engage anytime something goes wrong in Saskatchewan, and it's really nice to be able to provide them with the resources that they need to help others. So, but again, man, yeah, it was tough at first, but fortunately, you can rely on certain things, again, from the locker room, right? Like when I say that you can be the most competitive, right? Like you can be a guy that stays up, a little bit later than everybody else to try to study for an oncoming certification, right? You can use, one of the things that I really relied on was the ability to create, to be strategic, but also stick to a game plan, right? Like I think that I took that discipline from, the football field into the boardroom, as they say, right? And being able to execute a strategic plan and a strategic vision, and really, put a goal in your mind, and focus on that goal. You know, it was tougher at first because when I got into the real world, Tim, nobody, like, there was nothing to win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I started, like, I had gone from like winning to focusing on winning a championship every single day of my life, right? So then, like, I get out in the real world, and the goal seemed to be, oh well, this guy's really well off. He's got a couple of vacation homes, man. He's gonna, you know what I mean? And you're like, well, that's not winning anything,
Yeah.
right? So
Give me
yeah,
the trophy.
yeah, I needed something, man. So you know what? Yeah, it was just focusing that energy onto something else. But that initial focus shift, it was tough, just because you're not passionate about anything, like you were passionate about sports.
That's true. That's true. Do you find that athletes in general, they will be good to work in a team setting? Because I mean,
Oh
obviously
man,
you have people
yeah,
that work with you in a team setting, right? Do you find that they'll be really
yeah.
good to work with in a team setting?
Absolutely, and that's where I find myself self excelling now, is that athletes, if you're able to harness the teachings that they picked up in the locker room,
Mhm.
you're going to have a lot of success building your teams, right? I've always said, hey, listen, if you want to have success, hire an athlete, because they're able to stay focused, they're able to look at a goal, and literally wake up every single day and work towards that. They're able to bring people together that may have different interests, all in, and get them all going to one goal,
That's
right?
true.
And that's one of the best things, is like, in the locker room, you've got all sorts of different personalities, right? You've got all sorts of different motivations, but that one goal that you all share is a championship. And I think that athletes, when they're in team settings in the professional world, that brings them back to the locker room. It's
That's true.
working with people who may not see the same things as you, but hey, we're working together. And athletes are really good at identifying different skill sets and saying, okay, like, hey, let's, this is your skill set. You take the reins on this. And
Yeah.
I find that they're also, myself, for instance, I know I'm not the smartest in the room a lot of times. As a matter of fact, I don't want to be. If I'm the smartest in the room in our meetings, then I'm in trouble, right? But if I'm somebody that can identify someone else's strength and understand that person is going to put us in the best chance to advance our
True.
whatever we want to do, that's perfect. And I think that athletes have a real good knack for seeing those sort of things.
That's true. Yeah, I find
Yeah.
that, like, a lot of people, they want to be the smartest in the room. They want to be the best at everything. But from what you're
Mhm.
saying, find people that are better than you, surround
Yeah.
yourself with those
Yeah.
people so that they can help you execute different things that
Yeah.
they're good on, and you can focus on what you are really good on, right?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Exactly. Right. Like, I mean, the Canadian Red Cross is a great example. We're an emergency management organization. When people really think about it, right? Like, when
Mhm.
people say, "Oh, the Canadian Red Cross," they think emergency management,
Yeah,
right? But again, like, as the leader of the province, I don't know how to put a duty roster together. For instance, I don't know how to, I don't know how to stand an emergency evacuation center up, right? But my staff does,
yeah,
so but knowing that and being able to rely on them, but also empower them, that's what coaches do, right? Like, man, the best coaches, when we won our 2007 championship, Tim, you know, Coach Austin was so good at empowering other people. He would never talk to us, from a position of authority. He would always tell us, "Hey, man, I'm your biggest fan."
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he was just along for the ride, and I think that that's what got us through the hard times. Is when there was adversity there, we understood that, hey, man, like, our coach is, he trusts us, right? And that gets you to the point where you want to succeed at all costs. The minute you get your staff and your teams to think about someone other than themselves when they're looking at a big goal, that's when you've won. And I think that that's what sports does. Is I think that there's athletes, when they come from the field to the boardroom. I think that you get a guy who knows how to be selfless. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And can actually, you know put aside some of the ego there in order to succeed with the bigger picture.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Because I mean, from a business perspective too, right? Like you want to put people in the position of leadership that understands leadership, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
just from listening to you, some athletes in general, they just understand that, right? Because they've been in different positions of leadership. They've been led and they've been assigned certain tasks to say, hey, this is your task. They've been in strategic planning. So there seems that there's a lot that, if athletes were to be in the workforce, there's a lot that they bring to the table. And
Yeah.
that is amazing.
You know,
From a leadership perspective, what would you say is your style of leadership? Is it the same as Coach Austin when
yeah.
you won the CFL Cup?
Well, I'll say this. I'm still working on that. You know what I mean? I think that that's something that I'm working on every day. But I will say that if I look at myself, I'm a big believer. You look at athletes, right? You think agility. You know what I mean? You think the ability to, for instance, if you're a defensive back, flip your hips and get running backwards as fast as you can, as fast as you run forwards, right? The offensive line and defensive linemen, right? The sudden impact, but the ability to switch directions and chase a ball down. I always look at leadership like that. I think that you should be agile as a leader. There's gonna be times where your team needs to see you leading from the front.
Yeah.
Right. Your team needs to see you at the front, literally doing all the grunt work. There's going to be times where your team needs you at the back because they need you to empower everybody, and the greater good is achieved by empowering the team and getting them to get to where you need to be. And then there's times where I really think that leaders need to be in the middle. Right, it's pulling the people that are behind, that's pulling them up, and it's actually physically taking them and getting them to the front where your other people are that are having a really easy time managing the task at hand.
Building them up.
So building them up and getting them on the same page as the people that are already there. And I think that's it, man. I think that if I would say anything about my leadership, it's agile. And again, it's that way because there's going to be different times and different scenarios where I'm needed. And if I only sit there and I look at it from one lens, you miss something, right? Like you never want to miss something as a leader, right? So you have to be open to as many sort of options and leadership styles as you can.
That's true. So, with the pandemic that hit last year, it forced a lot of people to start working from home, and that face-to-face interaction is not there, right? I know as a leader, sometimes the face-to-face face-to-face time with your employee can help you kind of, lead and build them up and things like that. How do you how did you pivot when you have all your staff working from home? You still have things to do. You still have to make sure that you hit your goals, and you have to make sure that they're still working as hard as they normally would. How do you motivate them? How did you do it?
Well, you know what? We spend a lot of time trying to connect in different ways, right? So, for instance, there'll be times where we schedule a meeting with all our staff in the province, but also open it up to volunteers and to our external stakeholders like our executive cabinet. And what I'll do is just give a straight out update. It'll be about 40 minutes of straight. This is what's going on in the Canadian Red Cross. This is how we're handling things. These are our operations right now. Informative, right? But then there's the times where, for instance, last week, right, I scheduled virtual coffee visits in every single office, right? And so the people, for instance, who would normally be in the Saskatoon office, they were in our virtual coffee for Saskatoon. And honestly, I just touched base and hung out. You know what I mean? we asked a bunch of interesting questions. Like, we asked, hey, if you were an animal, if you were able to replace your legs with the legs of an animal, what would it be, right? And we talked about, what animal we choose and why we chose it, and so those are the more looser type of engagements, and then there's the times where you're reaching out and you're trying to finalize and discuss things, right? I think that now that we're all in a virtual world, again, I think you've got to be pretty agile about the way you approach it, right? Like, not everybody, and here's the other thing too is, I mean, we're literally on Zoom meetings all day. You know
That's
what I
true.
mean? So does it really do good if Luke schedules a Zoom meeting where he's just blabbing on about things that we got to do? You know what I mean? Like, everybody knows what we have to do, right?
Right.
Like, we understand our roles, and we know our assignments, and we know the things that we're being expected to do at a national level,
That's
right?
true.
So sometimes you just you just take those opportunities to stop by and just hang out, because you can still do that and connect with people, right? You just got to keep it loose. So I think it's a work in progress for everybody, man.
That's true.
I said last month, I said, hey, next time we have a pandemic, we're gonna be awesome. Man, guys, don't worry. We're gonna be great. We're gonna have a blueprint,
Yeah.
we're gonna handle everything just the way we should have. But this is the first time for everybody, right? And I think
That's
that
true.
that's something, again, that I think that my athletic background has really benefited, from that, and the way I've been able to navigate our not just with our staff, but the way I've been able to navigate personally
Yeah.
through COVID-19. Because again, being an athlete, right, you get used to sudden change, right?
That's true.
Like, if I'm a defensive player and I'm just, we get off the field, I'm just about to sip some water, and all of a sudden the quarterback throws an interception, we're right back out on the field. We're
Yeah.
used to sudden change. If you're an athlete, you're used to adversity, right? You're used to challenges, and you're used to, and the most important thing is, you're used to focusing on only the things that you can control. I talk a lot about that with our staff. Control the things that we can control, especially with an organization the size of ours, right? We're a national organization with offices in every part of the country. We're part of an international conglomerate, which is the Red Crescent movement,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's a huge organization, and so there's a lot of moving parts. And I tell this a lot to people, and even if you're in a small business situation, you have to be able to focus and control the things that you can control. If you do that, you're able to pivot successfully whatever way you're needed. You know what I mean? So we talk a lot about that, and I think that that's also been one of the reasons why we've managed as best we can with the COVID situation.
That's good. You know, let's talk a little bit about online here, because I know that over the years that I've known you, you're really big into, speaking up online, anti-bully talks with kids and
Hmm.
things like that, right?
Yeah.
Being online, I mean, we're seeing more and more people get behind the computer and
Hmm.
saying all sorts of hurtful things to people, type of thing.
Hmm.
How, being that you're someone that have been doing this for a long time, that is very vocal about anti-bullying, what are some of the things that you've kind of done to
Yeah.
maybe try to help combat that, right? Because I mean,
Hmm.
those are important things, and I think it's also a little bit part of what you did as part of your work too, right? With the
Yeah.
Red Cross at some point. So, like,
Yeah.
what advice can you give to people dealing with the online world that we're in,
Yeah.
and the bullying that's going on in the world? Like, how do
Hmm.
people kind of cope with that?
Well, I think that there's sort of two phases to that, right? It's the way the parents and teachers handle it, and then it's the way that the person that's actually involved in the situation handles it. For the parents and teachers, um, I really always encourage, hey, teach your kids about the block button.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like at the very minimum, show them how to use or block somebody, because that can save you a whole bunch of grief if
Yeah.
at the very sort of just onset of the thing, right? For students and people who are going through it, because again, this happens in the professional work world, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I always talk about is surrounding yourself with a team. right? You've got to be able to talk to as many people as you can about the problem that you're in. Because the more people that you get around you that know about your problem, I mean, that's a network now that they can reach out to,
That's
right?
true.
They now know that they want to support you, but so does so and so does that person. And they can start connecting the dots and connecting their thoughts, right? To help you get yourself out of that situation. And I think that it's easy to say, but for young people today, it's also it's also hard trying to identify those people that that need to be in your network. And I always say start with your family, right? Like start with your family, whether it's easier to talk to your mom or it's easier to talk to your dad or you're easier to talk to your brother or uncle or aunt. Start there. You know what I mean? And then start moving through your outer circles, right? Because at some point in time you're going to get enough people rallied around you where you remove yourself from the situation, because there's all sorts of things that you personally can do. But I always felt that whatever avenue you take for yourself, right, as long as you have a team that understands why you're taking that avenue, or if you need to take a different avenue, you're going to be all right. So again, it's social media has made it tough though, right? Because
Yeah,
it's made it very easy to be anonymous and say some really hurtful things.
absolutely.
I know you and we're from a different era. Like if that's one thing about being an athlete too, is you're an accountable person, right?
Yeah,
Athletes are accountable, right? And you and I are from a generation where if you said something, then you were going to be held to account. And you
absolutely.
had to look someone eye to eye and say that sort of thing. And this day and age, it's very easy to avoid that. So it gives power to people that normally shouldn't have it or wouldn't take it if it was an instance in that where the person they wanted to talk about was right in front of them,
That is true.
right? So you've got to surround yourself with a team of people. And again, that might not be your parents, right? Like it might be somebody else, but whoever it is, the more people you get like that, the better off you're going to be. Eventually it'll end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
All right. It's been great chatting with you. But before we end the conversation today, let's talk NFL a little bit.
Yeah. All right.
So, you know, I'm a big Patriots fan. I'm a big
Yeah.
Brady fan, and now Brady's in Tampa Bay. What is your prediction coming up here for the NFL? Who do you
Oh
think is going to
man.
take the Super Bowl here?
Man, honestly, I think I got a funny feeling it's going to be Buffalo and Green Bay, and I think Green Bay is going to win it.
All right.
I that's the way I feel it's going to happen. I think again, the Chiefs. It's so hard to win 2 Super Bowls in a row. That's why, like, the easiest answer is the Chiefs.
Yeah,
It's so hard to win 2 Super Bowls in a row. Like
that's
that's
true.
nearly impossible, right? Like you got to be real. But I mean, they've got the weapons. But from what I look at Buffalo, they're so like we always had this saying, especially when I was with the Montreal Alouettes, right? Like, is that, hey, whoever we played, they were going to come in the game as a really, as a really good team, a
Yeah,
great team, but we were going to come in as a family, right? And I think that the Buffalo Bills really sort of exude that, is that they're a family, regardless of whatever they go through. They're going to approach things together, and right now I do think they have a ton of momentum, and it's one of those things. I got my 2007 ring, there's a word believe on the bottom of it. It's engraved in the bottom, because that's what we always did in 2007. We just believed it was going to happen. I look at Buffalo and I see people who just believe that it's going to happen. And on the other side, you got, I mean, Aaron Rodgers has been playing out of his mind. You know what I mean? Like, I'm talking about MVP level, and it's been all year. So they just look impossible to stop. Like, they're the number one offense in the league right now. And man, they do everything right, everything. So it's going to be tough for your boy Tom Brady to get through
uh,
that, man, because
you know,
you know.
I believe in Brady. Just
Well, you're
saying.
gonna have to. You're gonna have to, because they're it's a tough climb for them. They definitely, the out of the 2 games, the hardest game is going to definitely be Kansas City Buffalo. I think that Green Bay, It's not going to be easy for him, but I do think that, if there's anybody who's going to win double digits this week, like by 10 or something, it'd be Green Bay over Tampa Bay.
Well, we'll have to see. I'm going to have to give you a call after that game.
Give me a shout, man. Give me a shout before it if you want to put some money on it. I'm ready to go.
Hey, Luc, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate your insight, and I think my listeners are really going to enjoy listening to everything you had to offer today.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, man. Always willing to do it. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you so much.
Conversation with Tim Otitoju. Let's talk about business and lifestyle.